Welcome back to Dan Recaps. Today, I'll explain the movie Timmy Failure, Mistakes Were Made, released in 2020. The movie opens with a polar bear crashing a truck into a house as a child narrator tells us the story of his adventures as a detective. We are then introduced to Timmy Failure, an 11-year-old who lives in Portland, Oregon with his mom Patty and his imaginary polar bear, Total. He changes his name to Timmy Failure, but admits the name is misleading. Timmy is only concerned with being great and dreams of one day becoming one of the greatest detectives. He tells us the story of how Total the polar bear came from the North Pole and found him. As Total's Arctic home melted, he traveled from the North Pole in search of food. He traveled by sea and by land until he finally reached Portland. Timmy's father walked out on them a few years back, and since then it's just been the three of them. Timmy runs and owns Total Failure Inc., a detective agency that solves cases. He considers it the best detective agency and is very focused on his new case, the biggest of his career. Timmy believes one of the keys to his success as a detective is Patty's scooter, the Failure Mobile, a Segway Patty won in a raffle. She calls it her stress reliever. His mom has set some restrictions on how he should use the Failure Mobile, but Timmy uses it anyway. It allows him to move around the entire town and has earned him the respect of his peers. Timmy also believes that the local law enforcement admires his talent but resents the fact that he doesn't work with them. He adds that Portland is a city full of crime and bearded hipsters, whom he calls the Russians. Much of Timmy's adventures revolve around traveling across the city with Total, looking for cases and outwitting the Russians. After his brief, Timmy pays a visit to a classmate, Gunnar, whose backpack was stolen. Timmy offers to help him find his backpack and hands him a business card for his detective agency, adding that he and Total are discreet. As Timmy begins to investigate the missing backpack with Gunnar, he reveals that he's only interested in finding his Swiss Army knife because he wants to earn a survival skills badge. Timmy surveys the house and finds Gunnar's brother Gabe with a knife. Gabe finds Timmy and orders him out of his room, and as Timmy leaves, he discovers a clue, but doesn't notice that Gunnar's backpack is in his brother's room. Since Timmy's mom works 2 jobs, he has enough time to himself to work on his case, but his make-do office just doesn't allow him to work efficiently. So at dinner, Timmy asks Patty to get rid of her clothes so he can have some more office space. Patty instead suggests he think big and find a bigger space to set up his imaginary office. She suggests New York, but after much consideration, he insists on staying in Portland with Total. He also considers hiring Patty to be part of his make-believe agency. Timmy spends the night checking out possible locations for his imaginary office, but has no luck. The next day, Timmy and Total discuss his agency's upgrade after solving Gunnar's case of the missing backpack, planning to use the reward money to fund the agency. Timmy arrives late to class, and his math teacher threatens to send him to detention if he doesn't look after the class hamster. He initially tells the teacher that he has a busy schedule, but after imagining being locked up in his cell for disobeying his teacher, he agrees. Timmy then tells us about his best friend, Charles Rollo, a former member of his detective agency. Charles has anxiety, so Timmy relieved him as a member of his agency. There's also Molly Moskins, a perky and optimistic girl who has a crush on Timmy, but he thinks she is problematic. Timmy also talks about the classmate he considers his arch enemy, a girl named Corina, whom he calls the Nameless One. He doesn't talk much about her. Soon after, the teacher tells the students he wants them to collaborate on a quiz in preparation for going to middle school next year. Timmy is partnered with Molly and Charles, but Charles is worried Timmy will tank their grades since he is too focused on his detective agency. When Timmy refuses to sit with Corina, who is very friendly to him, he is sent out of class. Timmy is annoyed that she is so oblivious to his hatred for her. However, it is implied that this hatred is really just masking his true feelings for her. Timmy uses recess to strategize on his cases. Later, Timmy's homeroom teacher complains that his grades are poor and he won't be able to cope in middle school. Patty tries to defend him, but Timmy doesn't seem bothered, and when his teacher threatens to suspend him, Patty gets upset. That night, as Timmy and Total continue to work on the backpack case, Patty scolds him for being indifferent earlier and tells him he needs to learn to apologize when he is wrong. Timmy feels bad about it, but Patty then teases him. The next day, Timmy goes to retrieve the hamster from a classmate, but learns it has died. Imagining it as a homicide, he sets out to investigate. But when he steps outside, he discovers Patty's scooter has been stolen. Upset, he cancels all his other cases and blames Total for being distracted. Later, he finds Rollo doing fencing and suspects that he is training to be an assassin. Soon after, he and Rollo team up, but Rollo is worried he won't be able to study for the upcoming quiz. Rollo recalls quitting after a previous mission went bad, but Timmy convinces him this time will be different. Rollo suggests that the death of their class hamster and the stolen Segway can be linked back to the Russians. He visits the library after and asks Flo, the librarian, to help with intel on Russian spies. Flo, however, responds by telling him to get out of his fantasies and just be normal. Not long after, Molly comes over and tells Timmy that Corina is part Russian and her parents are from Russia. Timmy believes that she is behind the theft and is trying to dismantle his agency. As Timmy leaves, Molly thinks he is fascinating. Later that day, Patty invites Crispin, a meter maid, for a date at their house. Timmy doesn't like Crispin. He believes he's a corrupt underachiever. He arrives at the date with gifts for Timmy and Patty. Over dinner, Timmy makes a meter maid joke. Patty apologizes and tells Timmy to apologize too, but he refuses. The next day, because of his unusual outbursts and behavior in class, Timmy is sent to see the school counselor, Mr. Jenkins. Timmy plays pretend with Mr. Jenkins and doesn't enjoy talking to him, but soon after, Timmy begins to slowly trust him with his mission. Later, Timmy and Rollo spy on Corina's home and learn that her father owns a bank and believes his failure mobile must be there. When Patty discovers that the scooter is missing, Timmy lies that he lent the scooter to Molly for a rally, but Patty says she will call Molly's mother to confirm his story. Timmy realizes if she reaches Molly's mother first, he will be caught, so he reaches out to Molly to make a backroom deal. Timmy tells her that the future of his agency is at stake, and she agrees on the condition that Timmy participate in the rally too. Timmy doesn't want to, but when she blackmails him into painting their nails, he agrees. Later that day, Timmy and Rollo try to sneak into Corina's father's bank. They are kicked out by security for wearing masks, but Timmy thinks the bank security was tipped off. Mr. Jenkins asks why Timmy is distracted and learns about his imaginary agency, so he then tries to get Timmy to do his homework as part of a mission. Timmy refuses to join a group for the rally as he's more concerned with finding his Segway. After school, Crispin runs into Timmy on the way home. He picks him up and apologizes for coming in between his relationship with his mother. He tells Timmy that he likes Patty, but Timmy doesn't trust him, so when he tries to bond with him, he doesn't have much luck. Later, at home, while doing his homework, Patty confesses that she likes Crispin and wants Timmy to like him too. She also breaks it to him that they have to move into an apartment as she can no longer afford to pay the rent on their house. As Timmy has a heavy caseload, he lashes out and walks out on her. Later, while on a field trip to Bonneville Dam, observing Corina asking questions about security at the site, Timmy jumps to the conclusion that Corina plans to shut off the power to all of Portland. Timmy asks Rollo to help him one last time and promises to do his homework. Rollo agrees and causes the distraction that allows Timmy to search for Corina. Unaware that she is still with the group, Timmy rushes through the dam to find her while being chased by his teacher, Mr. Crocus. Soon after, Timmy ends up outside the dam just as Mr. Crocus finds him. Timmy's scarf gets stuck but refuses to let it go. Mr. Crocus rips it and they discover that they are stuck. Suddenly, the operators open the floodgates. Timmy tries protecting Mr. Crocus from the flood as he considers him an intellectual equal, but then realizes that they are high above the floodgates and in no danger. Timmy received a 3-day suspension for his behavior, but he doesn't seem bothered. Patty angrily tells Timmy that she was fired because she had to stay home with Timmy, but he still doesn't seem to care. Furious, Patty shuts down his detective agency and throws out his stuff. telling him to grow up and be a normal kid. Timmy is sad about having to be normal and moving to an apartment. He feels that he no longer has a purpose, so Timmy lets Toto go to the zoo. Timmy returns to school after his suspension to learn that Mr. Crocus has quit his job and been replaced by a new teacher. Patty and Timmy move to an apartment. She gets a new job, and Timmy adjusts to his new life as a normal kid, but he is not happy. Now, he feels lonely. Mr. Jenkins talks to Timmy in school and learns Timmy isn't excited about being a normal kid. So he tells Timmy that he must learn from his mistakes and be a better person, and that he can adapt and keep doing what he loves. Soon after, Timmy discovers a Russian bug in a cookie given to him by Karina. Timmy recruits Crispin, even though he doesn't like collaborating with law enforcement. He tells Crispin he needs his help to free Toto from the zoo. Timmy enters the zoo, even though it is locked, and finds Toto. As they are driving back, Timmy and Crispin spot a purse snatcher and give chase, catching him. Timmy considers being his backup, but decides to call the police instead after crashing his truck into Mr. Crocus's home in his imagination. After a passerby asks him and Toto to move, Timmy accidentally backs up Crispin's truck into a pole. When Patty comes to see Timmy in the hospital, he apologizes for his behavior. Patty is moved to tears that Timmy has now become responsible. She tells him that she wants him to reopen his detective agency. And soon after, Crispin shows Timmy that the Segway was impounded at the police station for being parked in a no parking zone. However, this makes Timmy assume that the police are working with the Russians. Timmy isn't surprised that the police and the Russians are collaborating, as he believes Portland is full of crime and corruption. The day after, Timmy retrieves the Segway and gave a speech at Molly's animal fundraiser setup. Timmy moves the crowd with his speech on allowing polar bears into the school. Timmy wishes that Mr. Crocus could be there and suddenly believes that Karina and the Russians kidnapped him. So he sets off with Toto on their next adventure to rescue him. That was all from the video. Subscribe for more content like this and leave a like to help the channel out. Also, leave a comment if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Take care!